Gimbatulek, Ajnas Gimbatul, Ajnas Rakataluk, Arbruzul Mishikrimpatul. The change in the wizard's voice was astounding. Suddenly it became menacing, powerful, harsh as stone. A shadow seemed to pass over the high sun, and the porch for a moment grew dark. All trembled, and the elves stopped their ears. "Never before has any voice dared to utter words of that tongue in Imlandris, Gandalf the Grey," said Elrond as the shadow passed and the company breathed once more. "And let us hope that none will ever speak it here again," answered Gandalf. "Nonetheless, I do not ask your pardon, Master Elrond. For if that tongue is not soon to be heard in every corner of the West, then let all put doubt aside that this thing is indeed what the wise have declared, the ring of the enemy fraught with all his malice, and in it lies a great part of his strength of old. Out of the black years came the words that the smiths of Eregion heard, and knew that they had been betrayed. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them." Many others of Elrond's household stood in the shadows and watched them go, bidding them farewell with soft voices. There was no laughter and no song or music. At last they turned away and faded silently into the dusk. They crossed the bridge and wound slowly up the long steep paths that led out of the cloven vale of Rivendell, and they came at length to the high moor where the wind hissed through the heather. Then with one glance at the last homely house twinkling below them, they strode away. Frodo's legs ached. He was chilled to the bone and hungry, and his head was dizzy as he thought of the long and painful march downhill. Black specks swung before his eyes. He rubbed them, but the black specks remained. In the distance below him, but still high above the lower foothills, black dots were circling in the air. "The birds again," said Aragorn, pointing down. "That cannot be helped now," said Gandalf. "Whether they are good or evil, they have nothing to do with us at all. We must go down at once. Not even on the knees of Caradhras will we wait for another nightfall." A cold wind flowed down behind them as they turned their backs on the Redhorn Gate and stumbled wearily down the slope. Caradhras had defeated. Pippin felt curiously attracted by the well. While the others were unrolling blankets and making beds against the walls of the chamber, as far as possible from the hole in the floor, he crept to the edge and peered over. A chill air seemed to strike his face, rising from invisible depths. Moved by a sudden impulse, he groped for a loose stone and let it drop. He felt his heart beat many times before there was any sound. Then, far below, as if the stone had fallen into deep water in some cavernous place, there came a plunk, very distant but magnified and repeated in the hollow shaft. "What's that?" cried Gandalf. He was relieved when Pippin confessed what he had done, but he was angry and Pippin could see his eye glinting. "Fool of a took!" he growled. "This is a serious journey, not a hobbit walking party. Throw yourself in next time, and then you will be no further nuisance. Now be quiet." A single oblong block, about 2 feet high, upon which was laid a great slab of white stone. "It looks like a tomb," muttered Frodo, and bent forwards with a curious sense of foreboding to look more closely at it. Gandalf came quickly to his side. On the slab, runes were deeply graven. "These are Daeron's runes, such as were used of old in Moria," said Gandalf. "Here is written in the tongue of men and dwarves, Marlin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria." "He is dead, then," said Frodo. "I feared it was so." Gimli cast his hood over his face. From out of the shadow a red sword leaped flaming. Glamdring glittered white in answer. There was a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. The Balrog fell back, and its sword flew up in molten fragments. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back a pace, and then again stood still. "You cannot pass," he said. With a bound, the Balrog leaped full upon the bridge. Its whip whirled and hissed. "He cannot stand alone," cried Aragorn suddenly, and ran back along the bridge. "Elendil!" he shouted. "I am with you, Gandalf!" "Gondor!" cried Boromir, and leaped after him. At that moment Gandalf lifted his staff, crying aloud, he smote the bridge before him. The staff broke asunder and fell from his hand. A blinding sheet of white flame sprang up. The bridge cracked. Right at the Balrog's feet it broke, and the stone upon which it stood crashed into the gulf, while the rest remained, poised, quivering like a tongue of rock thrust out into emptiness. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and the shadow plunged down and vanished. But even as it fell, it swung its whip, and the thongs lashed and curled about the wizard's knees, dragging him to the brink. He staggered and fell, grasped vainly at the stone and slid into the abyss.
"Fly, you fools!"
he cried. When his
and was
eyes
gone.
were in turn uncovered, Frodo looked up and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass as green as springtime in the elder days. Upon it, as a double crown, grew 2 circles of trees. The outer had bark of snowy white and were leafless but beautiful in their shapely nakedness. The inner were malorn trees of great height, still arrayed in pale gold. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all there gleamed a white flet. At the feet of the trees and all about the green hillsides the grass was studded with small golden flowers shaped like stars. Among them, nodding on slender stalks, were other flowers, white and palest green. They glimmered as a mist amid the rich hue of the grass. Over all the sky was blue, and the sun of afternoon glowed upon the hill and cast long green shadows beneath the trees. "Behold, you are come to set in Amroth," said Haldir. "For this is the heart of the ancient realm as it was long ago, and here's the mound of Amroth, where in happier days his high house was built. Here ever bloom the winter flowers in the unfading grass, the yellow Elenor and the pale Nifredil. Here we will stay for a while, and come to the city of the Galadrim. At the hill's foot, Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree, but in his hand was a small golden bloom of Elenor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him, he knew that he beheld things as they once had been in this same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord tall and fair, and he spoke words in the Elvish tongue to one whom Frodo could not see. "Arwen Venamelde Namari," he said, and then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought, he looked at Frodo and smiled. "Here is the heart of Elvendom on earth," he said, "and here my heart dwells ever, unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we must tread, you and I. Come with me." And taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Cerin Amroth and came there never again as a living man. She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore there issued a great light that illuminated her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measurement and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf-woman, clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. "I've passed the test," she said. "I will diminish and go into the west, and remain Galadriel." They stood for a long while in silence. At length the lady spoke again. "Let us return," she said. "In the morning you must depart, for now we have chosen, and the tides of fate
In
are
the
flowing."
morning,
As they were beginning to pack their slender goods, elves that could speak their tongue came to them and brought them many gifts of food and clothing for the journey. The food was mostly in the form of very thin cakes, made of a meal that was baked a light brown on the outside, and inside was the color of cream. Gimli took up one of the cakes and looked at it with a doubtful eye. "Crumb," he said under his breath as he broke up a crisp corner and nibbled at it. His expression quickly changed, and he ate all the rest of the cake with relish. "No more, no more!" cried the elves, laughing. "You have eaten enough already for a long day's march."
"I thought it was only a kind of crab, such as the Dale men make for journeys in the wild,"
said the dwarf. "So it is," they answered, "but we call it lembas, or whey bread, and it is more strengthening than any food made by men, and it is more pleasant than crumb." For each they had provided a hood and cloak, made according to his size, of the light but warm silken stuff that the Galadrim wove. It was hard to say of what color they were. Gray with the hue of twilight under the trees they seemed to be, and yet if they were moved or set in another light, they were green as shadowed leaves or brown as fallow fields by night, dusk silver as water under the stars. Each cloak was fastened about the neck with a brooch like a green leaf veined with silver. A long, whitish hand could be dimly seen as it shot out and grabbed the gunwale. 2 pale, lamp-like eyes shone coldly as they peered inside, and then they lifted and gazed up at Frodo and the Aiat. They were not more than a yard or 2 away, and Frodo heard the soft hiss of intaken breath. He stood up, drawing Sting from its sheath, and faced the eyes. Immediately their light was shut off. There was another hiss and a splash, and the dark log shape shot away downstream into the night. Aragorn stirred in his sleep, turned over, and sat up. "What is it?" he whispered, springing up and coming to Frodo.
"I felt something in my sleep. Why have you drawn your sword?"
"Gollum," answered Frodo. "Or at least I guess." said Aragorn. So you know about our little footpad, do you? He paddled after us all through Moria and right down to the Nimrodel. Since we took to boats, he has been lying on a log and paddling with his hands and feet. I have tried to catch him once or twice at night, but he is slyer than a fox and as slippery as a fish. I hoped the river boys would beat him, but he is too clever. As Frodo was borne towards them, the great pillars rose like towers to meet him. Giants they seemed to him, vast grey figures, silent but threatening. Then he saw that they were indeed shaped and fashioned. The craft and power of old had wrought upon them, and still they preserved through the suns and rains of forgotten years the mighty likenesses in which they had been hewn. Upon great pedestals founded in the deep waters stood two great kings of stone. Still with blurred eyes and crannied brows they frowned upon the north. The left hand of each was raised palm outwards in gesture of warning. In each right hand there was an axe. Upon each head there was a crumbling helm and crown. Great power and majesty they still wore, the silent wardens of a long-vanished kingdom. Awe and fear fell upon Frodo, and he cowered down, shutting his eyes and not daring to look up as the boat drew near. Even Boromir bowed his head as the boats whirled by, frail and fleeting as little leaves, under the enduring shadow of the sentinels of Numenor. How it angers me!
Fool! Obstinate fool! Running wilfully to death and ruining our cause! If any mortals have claim to the ring, it is the men of Numenor, not halflings. It is not yours to save. It is not yours, save by unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me.
Frodo did not answer, but moved away till the great flat stone stood between them.
Come, come, my friend, said Boromir in a softer voice. Why not get rid of it? Why not be free of your doubt and fear? You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say that I was too strong and took it by force. For I am too strong for you, halfling, he cried, and suddenly he sprang over the stone and leaped at Frodo. His fair and pleasant face was hideously changed. A raging fire was in his eyes. Frodo dodged aside and again put the stone between them. There was only one thing he could do. Trembling, he pulled out the ring upon its chain and quickly slipped it on its finger. On his finger, even as Boromir sprang at him again. The man gasped, staring for a moment amazed, and then ran wildly about, seeking here and there among the rocks and trees. "Miserable trickster!" he shouted. "Let me get my hands on you! Now I see your mind. You will take the ring to Sauron and sell us all! You have only waited your chance to leave us in the lurch. Curse you, and all halflings, to death and darkness!"
"All confounded nuisances, you're the worst, Sam," he said.
"Oh, Mr. Frodo, that's hard," said Sam, shivering. "That's hard, trying to go without me and all. If I hadn't guessed right, where would you be now?"
"Safely on my way."
"Safely?" said Sam. "All alone and without me to help you. I couldn't have borne it. It'd been the death of me."
"It would be the death of you to come with me, Sam," said Frodo, "and I could not have borne that."
"Not as certain as being left behind," said Sam. "But I'm going to Mordor." "I knew that well enough, Mr. Frodo. Of course you are. And I'm coming with you."
"Now, Sam," said Frodo, "don't hinder me. The others will be coming back any minute. If they catch me here, I shall have to argue and explain, and I shall never have the heart or the chance to get off. But I must go at once. It is the only way."
"Of course it is," answered Sam. "But not alone. I'm coming too, or neither of us isn't going. I'll knock holes in all the boats first."
Frodo actually laughed. A sudden warmth and gladness touched his heart. "Leave one," he said. "We'll need it. But you can't come like this without your gear or food or anything."
"Just hold on a moment and I'll get my stuff," cried Sam eagerly. "It's all ready. I thought we should be off today."
He rushed to the camping place, fished out his pack from the pile where Frodo had laid it when he emptied the boat of his companion's goods, grabbed a spare blanket and some extra packages of food, and ran back. "So all my plan is spoiled," said Frodo. "It is no good trying to escape you. But I'm glad, Sam. I cannot tell you how glad. Come along. It is plain that we were meant to go together. We will go, and may the others find a safe road. Strider will look after them. I don't suppose we shall see them again."
"Yet we may, Mr. Frodo. We may,"
said Sam. So Frodo and Sam set off on the last stage of the quest together. Frodo paddled away from the shore, and the river bore them swiftly away, down the western arm and past the frowning cliffs of Tol Brandir. The roar of the great falls drew nearer. Even with such help as Sam could give, it was hard work to pass across the current at the southward end of the island and drive the boat eastward towards the far shore. At length they came to land again upon the southern slopes of Amon La. There they found a shelving shore, and they drew the boat out high above the water and hid it as well as they could behind a great boulder. Then, shouldering their burdens, they set off, seeking a path that would bring them over the gray hills of the Emon Wheel and down into the land of shadow. So ends Book 2.